Andrew Seabrook, and I am a parent of a first grader at Hyattsville Elementary School and a kindergartner who will be attending there in a couple of years. I'm here tonight to strongly urge you to move forward tonight with the Phase 2 funding package. Quite frankly, these schools cannot wait to have new buildings. And any further delays in this process are jeopardizing the opportunity to provide them with a safe space to learn. I am a strong supporter of unions. My whole family is. And I hope that these projects hire union workers. Unions are important because they exist to protect the health, safety, and well-being of their members. But let's not forget, in that same spirit, our current school facilities are compromising the health, safety, and well-being of our children. We trust you all as members of the board to work through the specifics of contracts, including labor agreements. The problem is that now it is irresponsible to delay this process further when specifics like this should have been worked out earlier in the process. Doing so in this late hour, as I said, compromises the ability to provide a safe learning space for our children. And we're relying on your leadership to provide those spaces. Please move forward without delay. And that concludes my testimony.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker, Lauren Volanovic, individual approval of P3 contracts.
Hello, my name is Lauren Volanovic, and I'm the parent of a first grader at Hyattsville Elementary and a fourth grader at Glenarden Woods. I'm also the PTA president at Hyattsville Elementary, which is one of the schools that's due to be rebuilt as part of the Phase 2 ACF package. I was dismayed at the way board members who were swayed by special interests hijacked the September 21st board meeting in the name of equity. But if you all want to talk about equity, then let's talk about equity. Let's talk about the learning loss that happens when kids can't concentrate because their classrooms are sweltering hot or freezing cold. Let's talk about how disruptive it is to have to move classrooms in the middle of the day because raw sewage is leaking into your room. Let's talk about the use of temporary classrooms that have been there so long that they now have their own problems, like randomly losing electricity and pest infestations. Let's talk about how PGCPS did not provide Hyattsville Elementary with a parking lot, so staff are at the mercy of using borrowed spaces from a church across the street. And if there's nowhere to park, the teachers can either go home or park on the blacktop where our kids should be having recess instead. And since apparently some members of the Prince George's County Council are so very invested in the financial related happenings of this board, maybe we can ask them where Hyattsville Elementary, which is already way beyond capacity as it is supposed to put all the children who will be moving into the new developments within Hyattsville that the County Council approved against the wishes of city residents who wanted to protect our ever diminishing green space. HES is a Title I school. Every single child that enters that building is offered a free breakfast and a free lunch. We have social programs to support our families with a variety of needs. But these programs can only do so much if kids are coming to school and spending the day in buildings that are unfit for human habitation. We are not asking the board to solve all the world's problems. We are not even asking you to solve all the county's problems. But we are asking you to do what you can do to improve the building conditions for the almost 10,000 students who will be impacted by the Phase 2 package of schools as part of the P3 program. Trust, as we do, that the PGCPS team who got us the Phase 1 schools on time and collaborating with unions and minority-owned businesses will do the same for the Phase 2. Approve the contracts as they are written with no MOUs tonight. You're worried about equity? Build the damn schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Laura Pillsbury, Hyattsville Elementary School PTA, Phase 2 construction package.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Laura Pillsbury. I'm the parent of 2 first graders at Hyattsville Elementary, and I'm in front of you tonight to urge you to pass the Phase 2 P3 package without any amendments or MOUs attached. As with the many others that are here tonight, you've already heard from, I'm frustrated with the board's antics in last Thursday's board meeting. The attempt to push an MOU that wasn't made available to the public or that has undergone a transparent cost analysis of its impact on the 8 schools that PG County Public Schools is required to build under the Built to Learn Act is irresponsible of the board at this hour in the process and comes at a great cost to our children. Least I remind you what happened last week. For one, the board at last week's meeting couldn't vote for a $10 million increase in capital improvement costs because they said they didn't have proper justification from the school to support the increase. The staff conveyed what the money would be used. One notable item, asbestos abatement in one of the swing spaces. The number was transparent, 10 million. The need was critical, asbestos removal. On the other hand, several of the same folks attempted various motions to amend the P3 preferred contractor recommendation to include an MOU with a specific labor organization, an MOU that was not made available to the public, an MOU for which there was not a transparent cost analysis of the impact of pursuing this agreement on the P3 project. I have trouble making sense of this, to be honest. We had members on the one hand that were demanding transparency for 10 million, and on the other, willing to accept without any transparency an MOU where it was unclear what costs and impacts it may have on the P3 plan. How do we know such negotiation will provide for the 8 schools? How many thousands of PG County public school students may yet again be left behind if their school doesn't make the cut? Also, I have grave concerns about the ethics of this board. Some of those same members have received campaign donations from the very organization they were negotiating the MOU with. Almost every governing body, I'm a federal government employee, I'm subject to these myself, has ethics rules governing their behavior. Would you find it acceptable if a PG County public school employee was directly negotiating a contract with a specific party, say for curriculum in which they had personal business with? No, I don't think so. And disciplinary action would be called for. Build the damn schools. Thank you.
Thank you, but I need to remind our speakers, profanity is really not permitted. So please refrain from using profanity.
My apologies.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Debbie Van Camp, individual P3 package.
Hello, good evening. I was part of a group of parents from Hyattsville Elementary School who attended last night's listening session at High Point to make sure that Superintendent House was reminded of the importance of tonight's meeting in protecting the ACF Package 2 funding. After the session, I had a lot of people from Hyattsville community thanking me and the other people who were there for fighting for our community school. And I noted to one of them that we have some really big shoes to fill because many of them have been involved in the years-long fight to get Hyattsville Middle School built. So you see, we've been at this for years and it is exhausting. And so when I thought about what I wanted to say to the board tonight, and because there are a lot of things that I want to say to this dysfunctional and embarrassing board, I just feel tired. Tired because we've said it all before, over and over again. We've testified from the front lines about the appalling conditions in our children's schools. And let me be clear, we know that Hyattsville Elementary School is not the worst of them. And we are here to speak for all of the schools, including those without active PTAs or members who have the strong voting voices and the time to spare to engage with you on this like we do. You've seen inside the schools that you represent, or I assume that you have, although frankly, based on who was at High Point last night, I do wonder. You know we need these schools to be built, and you know that the P3 package is the only way to get them built. And you know it works. Last week's ribbon cutting of the 5 of the 6 new Phase 1 schools built on time and on budget using union and minority company labor are proof that it does. But instead of approving the contract last week, you'd played politics with our children and our teachers, the children and teachers you are elected to serve. And it is very clear to those of us paying attention that this is politics. So stop playing politics. I'm sure many of you will have your time on the county council or state senate, but right now you are a Board of Education member whose job it is to do what is best in the educational interests of PGCPS children. That's it. That's your job. I walked away from the listening session last night, reminded of how many challenges PGCPS faces. The buses, the drugs, the teacher retention, the violence. And yet you have in front of you a fully funded way of addressing the deteriorated conditions, educational adequacy issues, and planning area overcrowding of more than 8 schools that have been waiting years to be rebuilt. Approve it. To do anything other than support this contract is negligent. We should not have to fight this hard for this long to make sure that kids in PGCPS can go to school in adequate buildings, which is such a low bar. So yeah, we're tired. We're also not going away. So build the beat schools.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Delegate Denny Tavares, Office of State Delegate, Phase 2. Is she here?
Yes, I am. Yes, I
Okay,
am.
there you are.
I am.
How you
Madam
doing?
Chair. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I just want to say that many of you here may not even remember how long it took us to get to where we are and the creation of the Educational Facilities Master Plan. And I have been part of the process for that long. And it took us 10 years to deliver, at least in my area, 9 fully funded 9 new schools. And we've been able to deliver from those 9, 3. 3 are in design, 2 are in permitting for combination, and 1 that is part of this P2 tranche. And as you may not remember, but we studied this to ensure to not repeat any of the errors that other countries had done, so that we're not stuck in our own purple line with the school problem. So that halfway through the process, the ticket price shot up, or we're in court resolving issues, or at the end of the day, being forced to pull out and pay billions of dollars, or when it could have been done differently, and like we did in the first tranche, on time and on budget. We filled buses and auditoriums till late at night to testify at every single CIP discussion that you all had for over 7 years. So this week we have a lot to rejoice on. We just opened 2 new schools, Hyattsville Middle here and Sonia Sotomayor. And in one of these cases, I saw the pride of a father that helped build the school.
Mm-hmm.
And now his daughter has a chance to aspire for something better. You could take that to the bank. The pride that a lot of these children had when you saw them. But now we have 6 schools pending that if derailed in any way, I know that this figure is going to go up. Mm-hmm. You all know that the floating figure has been 8.3 billion. Anybody who's been in the back rooms know that this is not the real figure. That was a figure developed 10 years ago. Now it's a figure that is going to be substantially higher given the wear and tear and the dilapidation on the buildings. This is why you've had, I'm not going to mention school names, but school buildings that have been in emergency shutdown where you've had to replace students and dilapidate them. And I just want to close real quickly. I just want to say, please don't push the deadline where we now have to push High Point to 20 years or 15 years. That is just unacceptable, not for this population. So with that, I just want to say we believe in unions. I trust you guys. We can work together, and thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody needs to eat.
Our next speaker, Ms. Tanya Wingfield. Citizens for Accountability and Governance, approval of Phase 2 P3.
Good evening. Deceptive, to manipulate or mislead, and that is exactly what happened when the superintendent's P3 recommendations from the September 21st board meeting, downloaded at 6:21 p.m., showed up in board docs after around 8:45 p.m. last night with different language. We don't care to hear any reason why the chair allowed this attempt to deceive the public happen. We just know any attempt by this board to introduce this document tonight in tonight's discussion is an OMA and a policy violation, not to mention unethical. The change was subtle, but the change actually changed the what was said to us, what was presented to us in the public on the 9/21 meeting. We learned in grammar classes the differences between indicative and imperative verbs. Indicative verbs make a statement, a suggestion, or ask a question. The board believes. Where an imperative verb states a command or directive, the board requests. Also, by removing PGCPS from the language, it now removes the administration from working directly with their selected contractor. There was a big difference in the language of what popped up last night unethically on board docs. Additionally, when board member route motion to amend the superintendent's recommendations failed in the 9/21 meeting, that meant the board failed to reject the recommendations of the superintendent in accordance with board policy 9367. Therefore, the phase 2 process should not have been delayed. Our group, Citizens for Accountability, we provided on 9/22 an email to this board outlining all this information. We will be so appalled if this board failed to read that email. Last, Citizens of Accountability and Governance, we are dedicated to informing the community of the good and the bad at all levels of government. We will hold elected and appointed officials accountable, and we will not tolerate or support any PGCPS leadership that employs deceptive practices like we saw yesterday. This board is a self-governing board. The citizens should not have to appeal to the state to hold you accountable. You need to do your job and hold your own members accountable. I yield.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Miguelia Salas. I hope I didn't destroy your name. Adelphi Hills Community Association approval of Blueprint Schools Phase 2.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and Superintendent House. I am the president of the Adelphi Hills Community Association, and we have been strong supporters of the ACF initiative from the very beginning because it was the solution for the misguided decision of a previous school board to build a middle school in our neighborhood on swampland. A subsequent board working with your highly competent capital improvement program staff had the creative vision, dedication, and courage to approve and advocate for the ACF initiative to build critically needed schools to address the staggering overcrowding in the northern part of our county. Last Thursday, after my workday and late at night, I decided to watch the recorded session of the board meeting held earlier that evening. After a week of joy-filled ribbon-cutting ceremonies for the state-of-the-art schools built under ACF Phase 1, one of them a new middle school in our neighborhood, I thought that all the board members would be on board with Phase 2, given the evident success of the initiative. To say I was disappointed is an understatement. It was shocking to watch the unproductive conversation that this memorialized in the video of the meeting. After a proper procurement process, last Thursday, the board jeopardized the timing and success of an initiative that is a model for the entire nation. In doing so, the board sacrificed the opportunity to present a united front in support of the best learning environment for some of the most needy students at this moment in time. Fortunately, we did hear some board members and staff present voices of reason in response to the argument that the lack of a written PLA tainted the whole package before the board. They pointed to language in the resolution of the proposed board's action that called for good faith negotiations to establish a PLA. The voices of reason offered several alternatives to postponement of the vote and reminded the board that its priority is our students and finding mechanisms to provide excellence in education. But these reasonable exhortations were silenced. We ask that you deeply reflect on the trust that the residents of Prince George's County have placed on you, thinking that you would consistently choose to invest your time and effort only in matters that increase the educational opportunities of our children. The quality of your leadership is critical to the success of this board. Your ability to do your jobs as colleagues and in a manner that is beyond reproach is essential to lift up the prestige of our school system. So we ask that today you cast a favorable vote for the ACF Phase 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all for your comments tonight. We will now move to 4.0 Budget Consent Agenda. 4.1 Approval of the Blueprint Schools Phase 2 Preferred Developer and approval to proceed to commercial and financial closing. I will now yield the floor to Superintendent House and his staff to give the board additional information about the Blueprint Schools Phase 2 project.
Madam Chair, may I ask for a point of clarification before Superintendent House comes up?
Yes.
So I want to just bring up the point about this being a superintendent's action.
Well,
And
okay, excuse me. Let me say this. Let us move forward, give it to the superintendent, and then when we have the discussion, you can ask every question that you want to ask, okay? Because
Well,
your question is going to be referred to him, okay?
it's actually a point of order, because I want to make sure that if this was a superintendent's action, then according to HB 1107, we look at it differently in the way the vote was taken and the action was taken last week. So I'm wondering whether our parliamentarian can assist us with that.
Let me say this, Dr. Zipporah Miller. We're going to move on to the superintendent because I believe as he explains where we are tonight, maybe your maybe your question will be addressed. Okay, thank you. So I will now yield the floor to Superintendent House.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, board members. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity for my operations and capital improvements team to, of course, led by Chief Coleman, as well as a couple of others that can provide some insight, and we'll also go through a presentation that I think will be insightful for the entire group and public. Dr. Coleman.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Board Chair Mickens Murray, Vice Chair Walker, and members of the board. Let me pull up our presentation. All right, so again, good evening. Board Chair Mickens Murray, Vice Chair Walker, and members of the board. Thank you, Superintendent House, for this opportunity to update board members and members of the public on item 4.1. Approval of the Blueprint Schools Phase 2 Preferred Developer and approval to proceed to commercial and financial closing. Last week, we celebrated the successful opening of 5 of the 6 Phase 1 Blueprint schools that were delivered on time and on budget. This alternative delivery model, or P3, was developed as an innovative way to address the fact that the majority of PGCPS schools were constructed over 40 years ago and are now needing replacement or complete renovation. To underscore this issue, PGCPS has the state's second largest and oldest portfolio of school facilities. The core pillars that are at the outset of our engagement, PGCPS made it clear that the Blueprint Schools Phase 2 program would have the following 3 overarching program pillars. 1, ensuring program affordability. 2, maximizing local hiring and community investment. And 3rd, having robust minority-based enterprises, or MBEs, and county-based businesses, or CBBs, participation. So as we consider Phase 2 of the Blueprint Schools program, it is imperative to first review what we learned from the design build phase of Phase 1. What is different about Phase 2 based on the Build to Learn Act, and 3, how we have addressed these issues in the Phase 2 project agreement before you today. First, the prevailing wage. Under Phase 1, in accordance with PGCPS policy, all wages paid on the Phase 1 project were subject to the prevailing wage rates issued by the state of Maryland, Department of Labor, Licensing, and Regulation. With respect to MBE and CBB participation, Our developer, PGCECP, was required to meet a 30% MBE CBE participation rate in both the design build period and the services period. These goals were exceeded in phase one. Specifically during the design build period, we had 101 MBE firms participate. We had 38 CBB firms participate. We had $140,891,688 awarded to MBE firms, equaling a 34% participation rate. We had $68,607,905.67 awarded to CBB firms, equaling a 16.9% participation rate. With respect to our union participation, from entering into a side letter with La Una to awarding 2 of the largest contracts during phase one to union companies, PGCPS, through our partner PGCECP, engaged in and incorporated union labor throughout the design build phase of phase one. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Associate Superintendent Washington, who is going to lay out for us the differences between phase one and the phase two project agreement. Associate Superintendent Washington.
Thank you so much, Dr. Coleman, and thank everyone for joining us today. We are excited to talk about phase two and how we are going to really build upon phase one and what we've been able to do. The Build to Learn Act really was the state's validation of phase one and the public-private partnership that we put in place. It added necessary state funding to the deal, and it also added a mandated minimum number of schools. We went from 6 to 8. It also grants the Interagency Commission on School Construction, the IAC, approval rights of the phase two project agreement. But it came with necessary state support, and we're so thankful for that, in the form of a $25 million one-time payment and $27 million per year to support the availability payment, totaling $810 million over 30 years. But with that money came a statutory drop dead date that we are required by statute to finalize this deal and get it approved by the IAC prior to June 30, 2024, or we will forfeit all $810 million that's been offered by the state. So for us, time is definitely of the essence. It also required a 4-party memorandum of understanding between Maryland Stadium Authority, the IAC, the county, and the school system to really lay out, and that's what we're negotiating now, to lay out the funding commitments, as well as just the responsibilities of operationalizing phase two. And finally, it establishes a state P3 fund in which the state will administer the matching funds provided by the county, PGCPS, as well as the state, and disperse those to us through the mechanism set forth in the MOU and the project agreement. And so next slide. One thing that I really want to focus everyone on is the funding sources. We start this process. It was been about a year and a half of working to develop what is known as the affordability limit of the program. For phase one, our affordability limit was set at $32 million. We all know it was a different economic climate when we first started the procurement, and we ended in COVID. But through our negotiations and refinement of the design, and really just impressing upon the developer of what needed to happen, and with their support, we ended at an availability payment of $28.6 million in the indicative to start. How that is broken down for phase one is key. This is a local funded project. Phase one is locally funded. It was locally developed. And what is also should be pointed out is our contribution, PGCPS's contribution to the availability payment, is funded solely from the capital program. The county's contribution is deposited as an additional disbursement into the operating budget. Both of them are then dispersed and deposited into the escrow account that is used to pay the availability payment for the developer. There is no state contribution on phase one. In phase two, we have set an affordability limit at $64 million. And however, right now we have just started the design process. And that's why we are, you will see us say repeatedly, affordability is our focus. We have a lot to get done during this exclusive negotiating period that will require maximum effort and attention to ensure that we hit that affordability limit. The state, PGCPS, and the county, we will all share in the funding of the availability payment. But one distinction that I want to make very clear to everyone is we are required to fund phase two out of the operating budget, not the capital budget. So this will be a direct debit from the operating budget as we go forward. That will be new this time than in phase one. So every dollar that we add to the affordability limit is a dollar that will directly come out of the operating budget as we move forward. And as I mentioned earlier, both the county and PGCPS's contributions are required to be deposited into the state P3 fund. So to really highlight how this has been broken down, the left-hand column is how we started this procurement. The procurement actually started with us procuring for 6 schools, and we felt that we had solved for affordability with a $50 million affordability limit. And it was broken down, 25 million from the state, 10 million from the county, 15 million from Prince George's County Public Schools. In March, we were told, and as part of the Build to Learn Act, that requirement went to 8 schools. We received a $25 million one-time payment from the state per the ratification of the contract, and an additional $2 million per year going forward. The county's contribution is still capped at $10 million, but you can see Prince George's County Public Schools contribution is now $27 million. Once again, this is money that is coming out of the operating budget. And so when we talk about affordability and our focus on making sure that we put a program together that hits all of our requirements while ensuring that we are affordable, this is really where we're focusing our efforts and why we are very keenly focused on getting started with the developer to do everything we can to tighten up pricing to ensure that we are putting together a program that's affordable and can withstand escalation and anything other issues that may come up. Another factor to make sure everyone is clear is that because of the model is privately financed, I think we all know what interest rates are looking like right now. And so we have a very narrow path to ensure that we develop and design the optimal and the ideal schools that we want, while also meeting this affordability threshold. And so we are excited to get started, but I think everyone can see here that we have some restrictions in place that we are working against, really, or working towards, and will require us to be very, very diligent and focused on ensuring compliance with our affordability limits. And so with phase 2, from a contractual standpoint, we thank the board for their support and for your support, and we thank the community for your support, criticisms, and requests for us to do more, to utilize phase 1 as a base, but to see what we can do to build upon it. And we've taken that to heart as we've built out specific provisions within the phase 2 contract that are there that that the developer has agreed to. And it's the draft form of the contract that was provided. Next slide. Before that, I want to just make sure that folks understand the timeline that we're looking at. If this is approved by the board, we will enter the ENA period. We are anticipating all 4 parties, and so we will be back before this board within the next couple of months, seeking ratification of the memorandum of understanding. And we are hoping to get that all ratified by December for all parties. That is what the developer will use. Basically, that's their promissory note to go out and get funding. They want to ensure that they have financial commitment and what that financial commitment looks like. And so that's what we're working on. We've had great progress, and we look to have that wrapped up fairly soon. In January and February, like I said, the aggressive timeline, they have to submit site plans to DPOT and design packages to the IAC. To show the priority of this, the IAC is committed to creating a special review committee to make sure that this is moved through as quickly as possible. That does not exist right now. And so to say that we have the attention of all levels of government would be a understatement. Everyone is paying attention, and everyone is locked in to support us as we move this forward. In April, we're expecting a guaranteed max price. All of this is spelled out in the contract documents. That will allow us to move to get the project agreement and everything finalized by the IAC and by Maryland Stadium Authority, with a target to close this transaction in June. Our current timeline, to be as honest as possible, has maybe 3 weeks of float. And I don't even think we have 3 weeks of float. And so when we are thankful for the state support, and they have given us some very tight strictures to adhere to, we're excited about it, but we have a lot of work to do. And finally, I would just point out these provisions that I mentioned earlier, because I do believe that, we have put our commitment down of enhancing what we've done before. We bumped up the MBE CBB participation goals to 35%. And to be clear, that's both on the design and over the next 30 years of the services period. It restarts. So phase 1, great, we got 34%. We now restart over. For the next 30 years, they must hit 30% for phase 1. For phase 2, it's 35%. Also, for the first time, we are putting together, and you will hear more about this in the coming months, the opportunity for everyone that's here, every Prince George's County resident, every Prince George's County business, to invest in the equity of this deal so that everyone can participate in this program. We believe that this is an incredible opportunity to build community wealth, and we believe that this is a mechanism to make that happen. Section 4.15 of the agreement is local hiring goals. We did not have them in phase 1, and we realized that that was something that we need to ensure is in place. That is in the contract right now, as agreed to, a 40% base of local hiring. The developer has signed on to that, and we're excited to work together to make that happen because we believe that we are a front door to the county as well. And our opportunities should be democratized as much as possible to allow participation by as many of our residents as we can. And finally, as with phase 1, is prevailing wage. That is the same provision that was in phase 1. We adhere to it. It will be utilized in the contract, and that is the base of all of the financial decisions that the developer will be making for all that touch this project. They will be paid prevailing wage. And that is my presentation. I will kick it back to Dr. Coleman and to Superintendent House and to take it from there.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman and Associate Superintendent Washington. We appreciate you as well, Mr. Madlock, for the hard work and to ensure that we get where I think everybody in this community wants to go. This board, this community, our council. We feel like we've done everything necessary to ensure that we have the start that we want to have to get this phase off. I'll yield this time and send it back over to Chair Mickens.
Thank you. Colleagues, may I have a motion to approve agenda item 4.1?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve item 4.1. Any discussion?
I do. I'm sorry. Let me put up my hand.
Yes, okay, and for the discussion, we will do 1 round of 5 minutes and 1 round of 3. First, we have Lolita Walker, Walter Fields, David Murray, Zipporah, and Board Member Rout.
Yes, thank you so much for recognizing me. I just have a simple question. I just want to know what version we are approving. This is the original version, correct? Before I vote, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Thank you for answering.
Anybody from the administration?
I'm directing this at Superintendent House. Yes, thank you.
Sure, absolutely. We can actually share specifically with the version it is. Speaks to if you're looking at the language, whereas the board requires PGC Education Collective to engage in negotiations and establish project labor. Associate Superintendent Washington, do you want to share any additional insights here?
Just clarity really quickly, and thank you right before Dr. Coleman goes for the time. I just really just wanted to know, is this the one from last Thursday?
Excuse me, you guys are breaking up, so let's Superintendent House, I need you to make your comments because you were breaking up. And Vice Chair Walker, you were also breaking up when you came back to answer him after that. So
I could hear him clearly. Can you hear me or no?
I can hear you, but Superintendent House his was breaking up, at least here in my house. So
okay, no worries. I could hear him. I'm just clearly perfect. Thank you. I just want to know, is this the version from Thursday? That's it. Thank you. Yes, my question is, are you talking to me?
Yes, Vice Chair Walker. Repeat the question.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, my question to Superintendent House before I vote, I just wanted to know what version is this? And so my question is this the version from last Thursday's meeting? Thank you for answering. That's the simple question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vice Chair Walker. The language has been revised since last Thursday's vote on the or meeting on the 21st. The language that you'll find in board docs, I'll repeat it now. That's the final language that's for consideration. It is whereas the board requires PGC Education Collective to engage in negotiations and establish a project labor agreement, and then it moves on to the next section.
Board Member Fields.
So I have a question about the language. I'm really concerned that the language changed, and I don't know why the language changed. The language in the original resolution, I believe, talked about a good faith effort on the part of the district to negotiate with the contractor for a project labor agreement. What this language does is it makes it a requirement. We have no control over any negotiation between the contractor and any union or labor concern. And so I'm not comfortable with this language because I don't know why it was changed. I believe that we were coming back tonight to vote on the resolution that was before us last week. This is an entirely different resolution given the change in the language.
Thank you. Any more comments, Board Member Fields? Then we'll go to David, Board Member Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm excited to cast my vote for this proposal. I want to thank you for your leadership in bringing this board together to make sure that we build these schools on time, that we do so honoring our labor partners, that we pay people fairly. We know, colleagues, if we've had time to read the past reports about project labor agreements on asbestos projects, that those projects hired nearly all minority workers. Projects were done on time. Our school system rated them as having been a success. And so I'm excited about this project. I want to thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you, Superintendent House, your Chief of Staff, and your entire team. My confidence in PGCPS and this school board has never been higher, and I'm excited to cast my vote for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Rout.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for acknowledging me. I am speaking in favor of the motion on the floor for a few reasons. I feel that this board has elevated, and so has the school system, with really getting phase 2 done, elevating the work that we've done. We understand, and we're so PGCPS proud that Prince George's County Public Schools Administration has worked with members of the board to ensure that all necessary components of this project is equitable for all, including PGCPS families. And so I just would also like to echo my colleagues' statements. Thank you, Chair Mickens-Murray, for really taking the meetings and, weighing everything that our community has risen up and shared as it relates to their perspective of this governing body. And I just want to I want to remind us all that we have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the school system is engaging in contracts that make sense, and that we are bettering our work and ourselves every single day. We did well with phase 1, and we will do better with phase 2. And it was because of the advocacy of our families. It was because of my colleagues on this board who gently pushed back. And it is because that we are working closely with an administration that understands the importance of equity for all. I yield.
Thank you. Board Member Dr. Juanita Miller.
I'd like to concur with Board Member Walter Fields, especially when we talked about concurring with the 6.1 from last Thursday, the 21st. There've been 3 changes listed on board docs, and Madam Chair, before you interrupted me, that was why I was asking for a brief executive session just to get clarification, but now it's open to the public that there were 3 changes that were made. One was posted yesterday. The last one, all of them were posted yesterday, and the last one at 10 p.m., for which I have not had access, or I've not read that change. I don't know why there was a need to change the language. We were very successful with phase 1, with incorporating minority participation and county participation. And I'd like to make a correction to Board Member David Murray in terms of that's a asbestos contract. The participants, that the minority participants, 32% or 85% of them came from out of the county. They lived in Virginia, and only 2 residents from Prince George's County were hired. So let's not deceive our public with misinformation. The data is there, and I shared this with him. So I am in favor of voting for the original presentation given by the superintendent, but I cannot support whatever has been done overnight without that being presented to the board first. We have not seen these changes. They were mentioned today, but that is unheard of. And for us to ponder over this to threaten our children, the schools that need to be built, and play politics, because that's what this is all about. No one has said it, but I'm saying it. This is political jockeying, and we should not continue to tolerate it. So that conclude my statement in reference to this new or this amended BAS board action summary from the superintendent. I concur with what was presented on the 21st, but let's move forward with going with that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Briggs.
Oh, thought that board member Boozer Strother was before me. I think she was.
Oh, I have her after you, but okay, that's fine. Board Member Boozer Struthers, and I'll come back to Board Member Briggs.
No, I'll yield. Board Member Briggs, you please go. The chair had you next.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Chair, for recognizing me. I just want to say that I too want to say that I am in support of the updated language. I want to remind us that PLAs are really an effective tool to ensure timely completion of projects that are at or under budget. They provide employers with a reliable source of highly skilled workers. They increase diversity and support equitable workforce development, and as well as improving worker health safety on the job. So I agree that this process should be fair and transparent, which some of my colleagues mentioned before. And I think it's essential that the same pride that was demonstrated in the story that we all heard about the father that was able to support in the construction of a school in his child's school system is demonstrated in this phase too. So I appreciate the superintendent and his team focusing on stronger language for all parties involved in the construction of our schools. And I yield back to you, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, Board Member Boozer Struthers.
Thank you so much, Chair, colleagues. I cast my vote in support of the original motion last week, and in that I was supporting the whereas statement that the PGC Education Collective would make a good faith effort for a project labor agreement and enter into negotiations. That motion failed. The PGC Education Collective did provide a letter of intent of this negotiation, and frankly, they could have been at the table with our labor partners negotiating this week if we had passed this last Thursday. So nothing essentially has changed. The language has changed though, and I'm quite concerned that there will be an Open Meetings Act violation notice put on us for all this. I took the time to redline the documents today, merge them, redline them. Most of them are administrative. I have them all right in front of me, but twice this document changed from good faith effort to request. And then a final version that went up that I'm sure not everyone knows, it says required. Like I said, I think this negotiation is going to happen. And I think we voted on that last week. So moving forward with this, I'm more concerned about we get going on these timelines. But if an Open Meetings Act violation ends up coming back to us, and then we have a delay because we didn't really approve the contract, I'm concerned. So we have a board attorney named Dennis Whitley who's with us. I hope he's listening. Mr. Swift, I see you on video. I think you need to step in here and let us know if this type of edits in between meetings is an Open Meetings Act violation. Will we find ourselves having to come back and actually did not approve the contract? So I'm just looking for those assurances for the public before I vote on this. I just don't want games. The full intent of this motion, I already voted for it. And so I will vote for it this evening, but I need to know, are we in violation of the Open Meetings Act for having these backroom editing that the full board was not aware of? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Who is talking?
The parliamentarian.
Parliamentarian, yes, sir. I'm finding you. Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
The motion that was if a motion was postponed to the next meeting, that motion must come back in that same wording.
This motion was not.
It was not postponed, it
It
failed.
I also do, it's still my time, right? I still have time. I have
Yes, you still have a minute and 51
It
minutes.
also, I still disagree about the superintendent made an action and we should have had 2/3, but we're past that, but I do think we still need to look at that. What we're saying is that on Friday evening, when you post your documents for a public meeting, there was one document. And then yesterday, there was a replacement document. And then I think again today, when this word required was now the new edit, was a third document. So when you post to the parliamentarian, if you change a document from the posting date to the voting date, that time period, can you change it without being Open Meetings Act violation? I'm ready to make an amendment. I have it all redlined right in front of me. It'll take more than 5 minutes, but I can make an amendment for every single change.
Thank you, Board Member Boozer Struthers. Board Member Zipporah Miller.
The parliamentarian has not answered my question. He has not answered if we are in violation of Open Meetings Act, because we're not going to tell the public that we sat here, we knew exactly the situation to get an Open Meetings Act violation and have to start all over again. The public is sick of these games. I just need
point
a
of information. Point of information. Point of information.
Point of information, Board Member Shayla Adams.
There was already a
I've asked
question
the
on the
question of the
floor.
parliamentarian.
Give me a minute, guys, please.
My point of information is regarding your question.
Let me
Parliamentarian and
Board
attorney
Member
need to
Adams
answer.
Shepherd,
I
let
I
me
do
go
not
to
want
the
an answer from the other
parliamentarian
board
first.
member. I need the
Look,
attorney and
we
the
don't need to
parliamentarian.
have discord. We don't need to have discord. Let me go to the parliamentarian first, about the Open Meetings Act. Mr. Swett, do you have comments on the Open Meetings Act violation?
If you discuss that Open Meetings Act, that might be a legal question, but I can point out that if proper notice is given to do something, from the time the notice is given until it is considered by the assembly, by the board, the wording cannot be changed. It must be the same as was posted in the original notice, although it can be amended at the meeting. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, I think the question is, the motion passed. So are you saying that when we brought this issue back, the superintendent did not have the authority and the right to change the words in that board action summary?
I'm not sure what this question is.
He answered my question. It was posted at the time on Friday. The language shouldn't have changed. As I said, I have all the red lines right in front of me. If you would like me to start a motion, I would be happy to do a motion on all these edits so we don't find ourselves in this position again.
Okay, I will, you want to do an amendment to the motion that's on the floor? The motion that's on the floor is to approve.
Madam Chair, her time has expired.
We have just been informed by the parliamentarian that the document could not.
So I will come back to you.
I'm done.
I will come back to you on round 2. And maybe somebody else make motions. Board member, Zipporah Miller.
Good evening and thank you, Superintendent House and team. Thank you for bringing that additional information. Many of my questions were answered in terms of the process, very clear. So thank you. I want to just reiterate from the past meeting and this meeting that I've always been in favor of ensuring that our students have innovative and state-of-the-art learning environments. That is really important for students and also important for keeping educators within our district. In addition, I'm in favor of ensuring that we honor, having labor unions, having minority businesses, having local workforce. And that being said, and also in favor of a PLA. So two things I want to point out. One, when we started this process on the 26th, it was already pointed out, there was a notification that the board docs were uploaded. I downloaded them like I normally do and read through them. On the 27th, at a different location, I went to finish reading through the documents. I noticed that there was a change in the documents. What is perplexing is we normally get a notice that lets us know that there have been changes. We got the first notice when it was loaded. We never got the second one, and apparently there was a third because this language is not in the one that I had on the 27th, which means, we were not given enough time to adequately prepare. I'm not sure when it went out. The second part, Madam Chair, is I was trying to get some clarification on process because there was some discussion about whether this was a superintendent's action. Because if it is a superintendent's action, it would have required 2/3 votes, and we need to know whether it is a superintendent's action because HB 1107 clearly says that it would require a 2/3 vote of all voting members of the county board to take an action that is contrary to an action. And therefore, it would have passed if it's a 2/3 vote with this in place if it's a superintendent's action. So we need to know that because an action had already been taken and we were not clear on the two. So, but one was for the parliamentarian, and I wanted it as a matter of process so that we understand. And two, to clearly understand if we are to be fully prepared for these meetings. I'm perplexed why we didn't get those notifications to follow up so that we can go back and actually read through and we're prepared to ask questions.
Thank you. We will go to Board Member Adam Stafford.
The parliamentarian didn't answer my question
much.
about the superintendent's action. I had a question.
I think your question was really to the superintendent, right? Was this his action? You were asking, is this his action?
But I wanted the parliamentarian to answer in terms of the action. What happens in a superintendent's action?
Okay, clarify your ask, because if you're asking the superintendent's action from last week or from tonight.
Well, both of them would be the same because they're
Dr.
still
Miller,
under.
you've spoken, and I have 3 other folks. So let me
just clarify why I'm asking. It's under budget consent agenda this time. It was under budget consent agenda that time. So if it's an action today, it was an action
a recommendation last time.
Let me just clear up.
Was a recommendation.
Don't interrupt board members, please. Let's have some decorum. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In the last meeting, everything under budget consent agenda was prepared the same way under board action summary, requiring the superintendent's signature. When we come to this meeting, it's still under board consent agenda, which it should be prepared the same way under board action summary with a signature. So I guess it's 2 questions, just so we're clear. Is it a superintendent's action? That's to Mr. House. And then for our parliamentarian, if it is a superintendent's action, what happens and what are the votes required?
Okay, so let's ask the superintendent. Is this your action, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've gone off camera because I've had some technical difficulties, so I hope you can hear me clearly. But my understanding that Board Member Boozer Struthers is correct in regarding to HB 1107. It's my understanding that the school board would have required 2/3 vote to take an action. Yes, to answer your question.
To answer the question that tonight's action is your action?
Yes, both last time and this time. That is correct.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay.
So then the parliamentarian, to clarify, because if it's saying that it required a 2/3 vote and it was a superintendent's action, that means action was taken at the last meeting. on this, and the
Okay,
vote
okay.
was 6 yes, 4 no, and 2 abstentions.
Okay,
So
but
the
to
next
the,
item move forward.
yes, but to the parliamentarian, the vote happened last week, but the vote failed. So as long as you understand that, Mr. Swit, please address Board Member Zipporah's question. Because both of these, the superintendent has said, are his actions, the one from last week and the one from tonight. And the one from last week failed. Go ahead, Mr. Swit.
If I understand it correctly, if, in this case, we're talking about 4.1, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
If 4.1 is proposed solely on behalf of that office, then according to that law, it requires a 2/3 vote. And I believe the superintendent said it was, but I mean.
Right. So we don't need to vote on last week's motion because it failed, correct?
That's correct.
My understanding was if it was a superintendent's action, that it
Is it
still
my
moves
time?
forward.
It moves forward.
That's what the parliamentarian said in last week's meeting, that if it's a superintendent's action, it still moves forward. It only requires a 2/3 vote if the action is contrary to what the superintendent puts forward.
That is correct. It takes a 2/3 vote in the negative to not do it. If 4.1 is proposed solely on behalf of that office, I know it's superintendent, it's that
Yes,
office.
right. So I think
that
the
means
board
that
is
we
asking
actually
for- I think what
Can
the
I-
board- I think what
Can
the
I
board-
just clarify what I heard from the parliamentarian? What I'm hearing, that if it's superintendent's action today, it was last week, and it should have moved forward anyway last week, because the 2/3 vote wasn't there in the contrary, and it was his action, and he just concurred that it should have moved forward.
It means that a majority vote will pass it. It takes a 2/3 vote to overrule it.
So we're on to
Right, so point of order,
who is talking?
Lolita Walker.
Vice Chair Walker, point of order.
Yes, thank you. I'm calling just a point of order because it's been clear at this point that 2/3 needed to overturn it. We did not have 2/3 to overturn it. Therefore, this motion that is on the floor right now is null and void. It would have passed forward as we were last week. That's what I just heard from the parliamentarian, and I just wanted to, as the chair, come to you and say, as the chair, what you also heard, so that we can move forward on passing this.
That's
'Cause
not
what I
correct.
just heard.
That's
Okay,
not
can you
correct.
please correct me?
Parliamentarian is talking. I mean, he's answering you, please.
Thank you.
A rule like that is interpreted that it takes a 2/3 vote in the negative to overrule his. It takes a majority to pass it, and you didn't have that, but you couldn't overrule anything he did by a 2/3 vote.
Right.
Because we didn't have 2/3.
In
So I
the
am
negative.
right. It was in the negative. So I need your help with it, because and I'm so glad that you're educating all of us, including the public. So thank you for bearing with me. Last week we had a superintendent's board action that came forward. And there was then a motion to amend that, which now, in my estimation, so thank you for helping me, now was counter to what it is that he had already pressed forward. Therefore, a 2/3 vote was needed in order to pass anything that was different from what it is that he had already presented for his action that he had. But so if you can just explain how I'm not correct on that, I'm happy to just better understand that for myself and the public. Thank you so much.
If you're talking about an amendment to any such motion, an amendment is adopted by a majority vote, period.
But I think what Vice Chair is asking you, sir, is there a way for us to go back from today to revisit the vote from last week, which failed because it didn't get a majority vote, and there wasn't enough votes by 2/3 to overturn it, is what I heard you say.
You can make the motion again.
Madam Chair, this is
Mr. House.
Superintendent House.
Superintendent House.
Action is for this particular time. It was a recommendation last meeting. I think there's a little confusion here.
Thank you.
was a recommendation last time for action this time.
Okay. Does that help board members, please? With a nod of
What, just clarify, what
May I
is the
please
difference?
speak?
Because
It's
it
my
was both
turn. They've
under
had
the
over
board
5
consent.
minutes,
Excuse
Chair
me.
McInnes-Murray.
But this is we need to get the process correct, because we're not gonna, I would not like us to get any violations.
I understand. I understand all of that. So Superintendent House, I will give you one more opportunity to explain to the board what it is that you want us to vote on tonight.
What has been put in front of you this evening, the last version of what has been put in front of you this evening. Very clear.
Thank you so much. Now, can we proceed with my list? Board Member Adam Stafford.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you so much to Superintendent House, to Chair McInnes-Murray, to the entire Capital Improvement Department, to Jason Washington and Dr. Coleman for coming together to really move this forward. And I want to just say that we really strengthened the language in the board resolution to make it clear that the board expects the PGC collaborative to negotiate that PLA. So to my colleague earlier, we're not negotiating that. That's up to the PGC collaborative and the developer. And we intend as the board to monitor and make sure that they do that, and make sure that that negotiation and that final resolution that comes before us is one that's going to get this project done on time and within the budget. So I'm asking all of my colleagues to remain vigilant and request those updates from the P3 on how this work is going. We have come together to get this done without sacrificing our timetable to get these new schools built. I plan to vote tonight so that we can get started on these negotiations tomorrow. To those students that came here today, yes, your school will be built. To those families, yes, your school is going to be built. And, I am just grateful that we are saying as a board that we are holding our school administration accountable and the developer accountable to ensure that there are guardrails in this agreement to protect against wage theft. I'm proud to stand with labor this week, just like our president, President Biden, first president ever to stand on the picket line on the side of workers. And I just believe that we have an enormous opportunity in front of us to get these 8 new schools built on time. And I'm ready to pass this tonight so we can get started on negotiations tomorrow and getting our work done in support of these students. And so I'd like to call the question now, Madam Chair, to not belabor this. I think we're ready to vote.
Point of order.
I
have to have a second. We have to
Second.
have a second and 2/3 to call the order.
Okay.
Right,
A second from Jocelyn Rout.
Okay, there has been a call to vote, and it has been seconded by Board Member Rout and Miss Martin Dent. Thank you. Which one? Okay. Thank you, Miss Dent.
You're welcome.
So Miss Dent, on the motion to go forward with a vote, would you call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Adams Stafford.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir. Please talk.
I just want to make sure it's clear what we're voting on.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Yes.
clear
We're only voting so that the vote is we are ready to vote. So if you vote this in the affirmative, then that means we can go back and just vote on approving 4.1.
Well,
if you vote it down, it continues the discussion, I believe, parliamentarian. Am I wrong or right?
If the motion passes by a 2/3 vote, it ends debate and ends amendment, with the exception of the board's bylaw that says the chair should finish up the names on the list that were recognized.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Whitley.
If that's the case, I just want to recommend if we're moving to an ultimate vote, I would recommend that we follow Board Member Booth Struther's suggestion, and that the motion be amended to approve the original documents as posted with the amendments that Board Member Booth Struther said that she's outlined, so that that would hopefully limit any Open Meetings Act exposure.
Mr. Whitley, we're in the middle of a previous question vote.
Right, so we need to vote this up or down first, Mr. Whitley.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
so
can't disrupt a vote. Our parliamentarian made that very clear last week. You cannot disrupt a vote, and it's been disrupted.
Well, I'd like to know what we're voting on
Okay,
because this is very
excuse me, board, please, let's have some decorum for the public, please. So what we're voting on is to proceed to vote.
exactly.
That is what we're voting on now. And if it passes, Mr. Parliamentarian, how many votes do we need for it to pass?
2/3.
2/3 vote. Okay, Ms. Dent.
Madam Chair,
Please
please,
call the roll.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
please.
Dr. Miller.
We keep saying we're voting to vote. To vote for what? I'm just trying to get clarification because wait a minute, may I finish? Board Member Boozer Strother
out of order.
made an amendment. So when did you become parliamentarian?
Well, look,
Madam Chair, I did have the floor and you were acknowledging.
Let me say this, Dr. Miller. I get it that board members are kind of divided on this process. I thought that when Superintendent House made it clear that we were voting tonight on the board action summary. Now I understand that the motion was put on the floor for us to go to the vote and not and in debate. And then I was told by the lawyer that even if that passes, I must go back and have the folks that are already in the pipeline to speak. So the motion on the floor that we're dealing with right now is, do you want to proceed, board members, to go directly to the vote? That is what we're voting on, and it takes 2/3 for that to pass. Now, Ms. Dent, please call the roll.
Madam Chair, did I just hear legal counsel say that we may be in an OMA violation? So we were given legal counsel. I'm just questioning.
You heard the lawyer interject into the conversation while a motion was on the floor. So I understand that, but we need to complete the motion. So the motion is to go to the vote. And we need 2/3 of the board members for that vote to pass to stop the debate. So let's call the roll, Ms. Dent.
On the motion, Ms. Adams Stafford.
Aye.
Ms. Boozer Strother.
No.
Mr. Briggs. Mr. Fields.
No.
Dr. Harris.
No.
Mr. Jackson. Ms. LaSalia Frazier.
Aye.
Dr. J. Miller. Dr. Z. Miller.
No.
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Mrs. Rout.
Aye.
Ms. Walker.
No.
Ms. Rivera Forbes.
No.
Ms. Mickens Murray.
Aye. So the motion fails. So now we go back to the list that I have for speakers on the main motion, and that is to approve item 4.1 tonight. So we're going to board member Madeline LaSalle Frazier, first round.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone that has come together to, especially to our CIP process and our superintendent and our whole department of labor. I am very disappointed in the process that we've been going through. I think our kids, our children, our scholars deserve better. I think we need to move forward and do what we need to do. I am pro voting today for project labor agreements and making sure that these schools are built and that we stop wasting time. I need everyone to think about the big picture, and the more that we bicker, the more that we argue, it's less time that we're spending on what's important, and that's our children and their families. So please, let's stop the argument, let's vote, and let's get these buildings done.
Thank you. Board Member Harris, first round.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Mickens-Murray. Hopefully you all can hear me okay.
Yes.
So thank you for the time. Yeah, I missed the meeting last week as it was apparent. But transparently, it seems like everyone is arguing once again about the same thing. Transparently, I feel like it is a waste of time. I'm appreciative for everyone's views, but this back and forth in the public light has been going on for a long time. And I was able to watch that entire meeting from last week as well. And following that, I didn't have been engaging with staff a bit more concerning specific questions that I have. To be clear, I'm a supporter of building these buildings on time because we are moving toward a very, very strict deadline that has heavy consequences if we do not move forward in a timely manner. I have expressed to a number of individuals that I'm not in favor of the way that the MOU came up to the board in general. But what I'm hearing from my discussions is that there have been some pain points from phase one. This suggests that we should have some sort of more stringent structure in place moving forward. Just through conversations with staff, I've been transparent in these thoughts and asking, is there a collaborative way that we can ease some of the pain points from phase one, but also keep us on track to affordability? What is the underlying thing we have to do to get there? From a project management lens, from trying to look at the whole picture, how can we take some of those lessons learned and attribute them to the continued success that we have in phase two? So my question is pretty simple, is for staff. Are you comfortable with this new language, and does it fit into the overall vision of collaboration from everyone involved in phase two?
We are very comfortable with the current language. We've done the due diligence to ensure that everything that is expected in this action occurs, and we've been very, very focused on including others in the conversation as well. From developer, that was a very important conversation. So to answer your question, yes, we're very comfortable.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent House. And so from my understanding, this is a collaborative change that functions within the comfort of the superintendent and his team. Again, I have to take what they say very seriously because they do see the whole picture across the board. And I do respect their input into this. So I'd like to reflect on what not only my board member, my colleague, board member Lasalle Frazier said, but also board member Pamela Boozer-Struthers, that we need to move forward. A lot of time is being wasted right now. And I think that we, in the spirit of collaboration, in the spirit of taking the advice of our superintendent and his staff, and if they're comfortable, then I am also comfortable with this. I yield my time.
Thank you so much. Second round.
Madam Chair, point of order, really quickly. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Point of order, Jonathan Briggs.
Yeah, I've been made, I guess it brought to my attention by colleagues that when you had the former vote, that my vote wasn't potentially captured. I don't know if I was on mute or not, but I was told that by multiple colleagues that they didn't hear me, though I came off mute. Just wanted to confirm that my vote was counted by Ms. Stent.
Oh, Ms. Stent, did you count Board Member Briggs' vote?
As a yes.
No, I did not hear it.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I came off mute, so I just wanted to clarify that I did say yes to the earlier vote.
Okay, thank you. The motion still
fails.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much. All right, second round. Board Member Juanita Miller. Dr. Juanita Miller, you're on mute.
Okay. I'd like to ask Mr. House, what happened over the past few days that necessitated or required or prompted the change in that language from the first, from 6 point. I'll just refer to the 21st issue as 6.1, that we're getting 4.1. And again, I concur with Board Member Boozer Strother that we are out of order or possibly in violation of ONA, because these amendments were made and they were made, as I indicated earlier, they were made last night up until 10 o'clock. And then today we're expected to come here and make an informed decision about that. I'm just concerned that we are out of, and this is unfortunate because this document has to be submitted by tomorrow. There's a timeline on it, and we're spending a lot of time over an issue that clearly, if it hasn't been clear to some of the board members, is clearly a politicized issue. And that we should stop doing with our students, our scholars, and our taxpayer dollars. I just want that to go on record. So, Mr. House, would you explain what has happened in the last few days that prompted this change and what the necessity, because what you brought before us on with 6.1 was sufficient. We wanted to move on it, but there were those that were opposed to it. There were the threats that we received from the county via one of our board members from the county council, and then you make the change. I'm really, really concerned about that.
So I've been in communication with the board chair in reference to a request, and board chair had indicated that she had been in communication with her colleagues as well. So from there, we did our due diligence to ensure, because there was some discomfort. We weren't going to move forward to do something just because it was indicated that someone wanted, the chair wanted it done. But we went back and did the due diligence to ensure that we had a level of comfort, and eventually got there after a couple of iterations. So that was the reasoning, Dr. Miller.
Well, for the public's sake, Mr. House, I don't know which board members the chair communicated with, but I can attest to the fact there are at least 5 or more of us that weren't contacted. And we just saw this language either this morning or this afternoon when we were able to get to it. So I really have a concern with the chair unilaterally making decisions for the whole board. And
Dr. Miller,
I'll do whatever is necessary to work
your time
with
has ended.
this board to move this
Dr. Miller, your time has
issue
ended.
forward,
Thank you.
so that so that we can meet
I
the
appreciate it.
timeline.
Okay, Member Fields.
Appreciate.
Board Member Fields.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this is a matter of principle. We cannot operate as a board in the public domain when we have multiple versions in resolution that we're supposed to vote on, and we have changes made at the last minute. This is nothing more than a backdoor to what we discussed last week. And it's clear it's a backdoor. There was no reason to change the language of the resolution to require that there be a project labor agreement. The first round of T3 was a success. Even claims of wage theft were investigated, and we got the results of that investigation. I think that part of what I'm troubled by tonight is that this has nothing to do with the building of 8 schools. This has everything to do with giving a gift to the building trades. We can have the same program that we had. We can be vigilant. We can hold the contractor accountable. What we're doing tonight, I believe, is an Open Meetings Act. That's why I will not vote in favor of this. And I will publicly say to the public, I am not voting in favor of this, not because I don't want 8 new schools constructed, but I refuse to operate like this as a member of this board. This is unethical and it's unprincipled. And as a board, we have to do better. We cannot have this type of action take place when we're unaware of what we're even voting for, when documents are posted on board docs and we have last minute changes. I saw this last minute change this afternoon. when I went on board docs and I pulled down this document and realized it had been changed again. So I'm imploring not my colleagues, but the
You
public
need to realize we're on.
to hold this board accountable.
Who's talking? Mr. Fields has the floor. Board Member Fields has the floor. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Fields.
So I would just like to tell the public, you need to hold us accountable because this is your school district. These are your school buildings. And for us to vote on matters that we have a shifting target, it's not fair to the board and it's not fair to the public. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. We will go to Board Member Pamela Boozer Struthers.
Thank you so much, Chair. Colleagues, in the interest of meeting all concerns this evening, I'm going to make a motion to amend the original document that was posted at the posting time on Friday, the 22nd, page 1. I make a motion to amend the word alternate to alternative, and that's in reference to alternative construction financing. I will not reference page numbers from this point forward because they do change, but I will go to the original whereas statement that the board believes that is in the best interest of PGCPS to request PGC Education Collective to engage in good faith negotiations to establish a project labor agreement. I recommend to the board that we amend that to whereas the board requires PGC Education Collective to engage in negotiations and establish a project labor agreement. I also move to amend the whereas statement that delivers the 8 schools. New Margaret Brent Elementary School by the long stop date of July 15, 2029 with a service term of 28 to 30 years expiring on June 30, 2056 to New Margaret Brent Elementary School. Let me see if that has changed. Long stop date, July 15, 2029. Service 28 to 30 years. No, that one hasn't changed. My apologies. So I have two amendments, colleagues, that I would like to put forward. Again, alternate to alternative, and the whereas statement that I believe everyone has seen both versions and that our staff can clearly capture. I finished. Is there for my colleagues to consider that motion?
There's a motion. Okay, it's been seconded.
Second.
It's been seconded. Colleagues, the motion on the floor is to amend alternative to what did you say?
Alternate to alternative.
Alternate to alternative, and to replace the first statement that was in on the 20, well, the whereas statement that was in on the 21st to the whereas statement that is included in today's on the 28th in today's board action summary. Is that clear to everyone? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? And I see a hand. David Murray on this motion.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to put a substitute motion to support Superintendent House's language that is on board docs and to approve item 4.1 as it's currently posted to board docs as a substitute motion.
Second.
Madam Chair?
Yes, I hope it's the parliamentarian who was.
It is.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Smith.
That's not exactly a substitute. I don't know what the member wants to do, but does he want to amend the pending amendment?
David, back to you. David Murray, do you want to amend the pending amendment? Because the motion that, as you stated it, is really the first main motion. It's just phrased differently.
Yeah, my understanding is that that's what a substitute motion allows to replace the motion.
Parliamentarian, he wants to replace the motion.
If you're offering a substitute to the main motion, you have to wait till the pending amendment is adopted or lost, whatever happens.
So we must vote this motion up or down with the amendments from Board Member Boozer Struthers, correct?
Yeah, except it's debatable. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and that's what we're doing. It's open for discussion. Any discussion? Board Member Boozer Struthers
Yeah,
and Vice Chair
on
Walker.
on the substitute, it is the original motion. It does not, I'm reaching out here to clear up the Open Meetings Act potential violation that will could set us back, that this contract wasn't approved tonight. So clearly, if there is interest in leaving open that question, we're seeing it, and I'm disappointed. I think we could clear this up tonight, as I keep hearing my colleagues say, let's get this done tonight, but let's not be subject to Open Meetings Act violation while we're trying to do it. I've extended collegial grace and patience in this, and so I would like our colleagues to fix this for the Open Meetings Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Boozer Struthers.
Madam Chair, point of information.
Point of information, Board Member Ralph.
Oh, thank you so much, Madam Chair. This is for our legal team. Does a Open Meetings Act violation cancel out a motion if it was to pass?
Yes, it could.
Okay, that's your answer. Okay.
If a motion, if a Meetings Act violation is found, theoretically, the action taken in violation of that could be stricken. And I just want to have a question.
Thank you. Were you done, Mr. Whitley?
I was not. I was trying to understand that. I know that there's a motion on the floor from Board Member Boozer Struthers, and I know that Board Member Murray offered a what do you call it, a substitute motion, but it sounded like they were substantively the same, had that same language, and I was just trying to.
Board Member Murray's motion was really the main motion restated. That one motion was to just approve the 4.1 tonight with the language that the superintendent has assured us that it's his language. The motion with Board Member Boozer Struthers is her attempt to keep us out of Open Meetings Act and to allow the board to accept the amendments that are in the summary board action tonight.
So I believe that Board Member Boozer Struthers' motion was basically to accept Superintendent House's language. It gets us where we need to be.
Exactly. So I'm trying to do that.
So
she offered two amendments to help us to accept the language as it's in the board action summary tonight.
Exactly.
From the language that was in last week on the 21st. That is what the discussion is about right now.
I just want to make sure it's clear and that board members are understanding that what Board Member Boozer Struthers is saying, that you can accept the language as written. It's just with she's amending the original documents that were on board docs to add the superintendent's new language.
But so, she's amending it from last week's on board docs. So I think we all understand
Friday night the 22nd. Nope, it was posted Friday night the 22nd.
Okay, from Friday night the 22nd.
Exactly. And what she's
then I thank you, Mr. Whitley. You clarified it's the date. She's asking us to accept the amendment as it was presented on board docs September the 22nd.
Yes.
All right. So now Vice Chair Lolita Walker.
Point of order, Madam Chair, before Ms. Walker.
Hey, point of order, Dr. Miller, Juanita Miller.
I'd like to follow up on the question about the OMA. This board needs to be reminded that we have already been found in violation of OMA policy and procedures twice.
Motion, Dr. Miller. Please.
Well, that was, she asked about the OMA, and I'm just letting the public and the board, especially those who just walked in, understand that if we get another violation, that could result in our board being taken over by the state. Or
Dr. Miller, Vice Chair. Okay, thank you, Dr. Miller, Vice Chair Walker.
Point of order, the last OMA violations that we had
Board member,
under our previous chair,
let's stop. Come on,
both of those motions stood. Both of those motions stood. Just
board members, you are tonight, we're demonstrating to the public that decorum in a meeting is not at the top of our agenda. There's a way to have a discussion, please. So can we move forward? We understand all of the issues from each board member. We understand that you are upset about the language being changed. We understand that. We understand that you believe that I unilaterally changed the language. So now we're going to board member Vice Chair Walker to address the motion that's on the floor.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to
go ahead, Vice Chair Walker.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank board member Pamela Boozer-Struther for ensuring that we stay out of our OMA violation by just restating and ensuring that we are on the up and up. I want to encourage and thank you, Superintendent House, for letting us know that you and your staff are in full alignment on what exactly the verbiage says. I just want to encourage us as a board to ensure that we say we're moving forward and we say we want to do this, but yet in the background, we still have issues and conversations that are happening. And so while I will move forward on this now because it is done in the right way and we stay out of OMA violations, we really, for this language, the slight language that did get modified, this trust that we have inside of our staff absolutely could have been handled last week. And the reason is because it is such a slight change that is happening right now. And for us to now say that it is required means that we didn't believe in our staff that they were absolutely going to handle it with the language that is there. So I am very disappointed that I believe that it was a gun to our heads in order to make some things happen, to make people happy. But I am going to move forward with this because I trust and believe that our PLAs or what we are going in is with good faith and that we will be able to do this as a collective board. What I don't appreciate is being made to feel as though because I voted a certain kind of way that now I am the holdup, when actually we had holdups last week. So we will move forward this time, but board members, team members, community members, we cannot be made to feel let me be clear, cannot be made to feel that now I am a problem because I'm not going with the language that you slightly shifted, and that is not okay. So I want to just make sure I am moving forward on this. And thank you, Pamela Boozer-Struther, for ensuring that we can stay out of our OMA violation and move forward today.
Thank you, Board Member Harris, and then Board Member Z. Miller.
Yeah, thank you. For clarification, Board Member Boozer-Struther, can you just tell me the difference between the wording from, I think you said the 22nd or the 21st and today, please? I didn't catch it in my notes.
The 22nd.
Yes, on the 22nd, the same document that was considered on September 21st was reposted. And at that time, the whereas statement, and this was page 7 at originally, or it's near the final language of it. Whereas the board believes that it is in the best interest of PGCPS to request PGC Education Collective to engage in good faith negotiations to establish a project labor agreement. And the most recent version that is in board docs, which has been now publicly discussed, has changed, and board council has noted that yes, in fact, and our parliamentarian, that is not supposed to happen. It could be an Open Meetings Act violation, is why I am saying we are amending what we see, the final document, because the original document really should have been there, and we could have made the amendment. Whereas the board requires PGC Education Collective to engage in negotiations and establish a project labor agreement. And also the second one was alternative instead of alternate, to explain the alternative construction financing program.
Thank you.
Board Member Zipporah Miller.
Good evening. Thank you. I think one of the things I was concerned about even before we took the vote is when I think it was legal counsel informed us would be in an OMA violation. Board Chair Mickens Murray, I'm a little disappointed to hear that you collaborated with us, because I know for a fact that you and I didn't talk about this. And you are aware that I do read my documents as they come out. And it's important for us to have this dialogue, because if Superintendent House wanted to put some different language and he's comfortable with it, I would have been at a point to move forward. And so I'm glad that we are able to move forward this way, as long as I'm assured that we're not in an OMA violation. Because what I wouldn't want to happen is we move forward today, and then in a few weeks, we get an email saying, hey, that vote didn't count, because the only individuals who would lose out of this are the children. I'm also disappointed in all of us, because we could have conducted this and we would have been finished with this last week. And even with this week, it coming back, we could have been finished with it if we had the proper documentation. So if this was done and the proper notice was given, we probably would have been finished at 5:30. I yield. I do want this to move forward.
Thank you so much. Board Member Rain Rivera Forbes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me. As I always say in every meeting, I am here for the best interests of the students and to advocate on the behalf of the students, because I am a student myself. So with that, I would like a point of clarification or information, just to know if there was a possibility that we were in an Open Meetings Act violation, if this motion could be overturned and would delay the process of my peers getting the schools that they need.
You're asking that question?
Yes, ma'am.
I guess we'll go to you, Dennis. Answer her question.
I believe that the actions recommended and the motion made by Board Member Booth Struthers severely reduces the possibility of an Open Meetings Act violation.
Does that answer your question, Board Member Rain? Rivera Forbes?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on this issue? I see no more hands. Since I see no more hands, I will comment. Yes, there was collaboration yesterday with the staff, with Mr. Coleman, Mr. Washington, and the superintendent joined us. They also spoke to several board members yesterday. And I don't know all of the board members that they spoke.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, but
No,
point of order.
Point
You're
of
out of order. In order for you to speak, and our parliamentarians should remind you that when you are speaking to a motion issue, you must step out the chair of the board and turn the chairmanship over to your vice chair or another board member. You consistently do this, and it is clearly a violation of Robert's Rules of Order. As the parliamentarian, you've been told this before.
Mr. Smith, excuse me. I am a board member. Everybody has spoken. I am the chair of this board. My understanding is, as long as everybody has spoken, then I can speak to the issue. Am I correct or not? Or do I need to relinquish the chair to someone else for me to speak as a member for this issue or any issue on this board?
If you're going to enter in debate, you should turn it over to the vice chair and
Thank
not
you.
take the chair again until the vote is taken on the motion.
Okay, then that's fine. Vice Chair Walker, I'm giving the floor to you. Now I will speak. It is clear to me that several board members are attacking Judy, me, Chairman Judy Mickens Murray, and you use procedural things, and the things that you're accusing me of are the exact things that you do. Now, I will say this to you. Yes, I met yesterday, and I think it was with the team, Coleman, Mr. Washington, and Superintendent House. And I met, and all I represented what some board members said to me, which all board members said last week, even though you didn't vote for this issue. The majority of you said, I support PLAs. That's what I heard. Although you didn't vote for that MOU. The MOU for me was getting into the weeds of the negotiation. So I get that. So what I represented when I met with the superintendent was what I honestly believe was the belief of all board members, of the majority of the board members, I will say, because maybe there are a couple of you that don't support the unions and seeking PLAs. I will also say this, attacking me in public to create this score. This has been done over and over to me since January 20th. I am letting the public know, not only is it 4 or 5 board members that consistently do this, they also have outside assistance. So I will vote for this. I will vote for Board Member Boozer Struthers' amendment tonight, because I understand for the 133,000 children we represent, we need to move this forward. If you want to use me to prolong not moving it forward, then that is on each of you as an individual and a decision that you make. But as far as I'm concerned, I am voting for the amendment for that Pamela Boozer Struthers put on the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to turn this over so that we can continue the vote.
Thank you so much. So Ms. Dent, would you call the vote, please?
Vice Chair takes the vote.
I beg your pardon?
The Vice Chair remains in the chair until
Oh, you
the issue
remain
is
until the
disposed
vote
of.
is over. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vice Chair Walker.
Thank you. There was a point of order. I don't know who the person was. If you can just say your name.
Shayla Stafford. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Walker. I just want to be clear that we are voting on my colleague Boozer Struthers' amendment to approve the language that Superintendent House has put forward on board docs presently.
We are voting to, thank you for that. We are voting to amend as she mentioned, there were 2 amendments that she had. Do you want to read it one more time? Board Member Boozer Struther, please, on those 2. And so we can be very clear as we go into this vote to move this forward. You had 2. If you can just say what the 2 are, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Could the parliamentarian update everyone?
You went on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Could I ask for Dennis Whitley to answer that, because I'm
sorry. I'm sorry.
Maybe he can provide the clarity for me.
We're at a substitute. We're not on my amendment.
Right. So I just want to go back. Board Member Adam Stafford, you at your question that you originally asked for your point of order was if we were voting on Ms. Boozer Struthers' amendment, if it was going to be the same language that was already on board docs now. And so what I wanted to do to provide you clarity was have her read that again so that you were very clear. I think you're asking for our legal team to answer that, and I'm struggling with why you want the legal team to answer it, but it's her amendment. And so she can read that out and get to the answer to your question.
I think I'd like for legal to read it as he understands it, because I'm confused with the different motions and subsequent motions.
There's only one amendment pending. It's the one made by Member Boozer Struthers. That's it, period.
But what about what Board Member Murray added to that? I'm trying to understand.
It's not pending. It was not in order. It was not made. It's not a question at this point.
So we're voting on the amendment.
The amendment made by Member Boozer Struthers, period.
Okay, so can Mr. Whitley provide me with his understanding of what we are voting on right now?
May I answer the question, Madam Vice Chair, if it moves it along?
I'm still confused on why our legal is answering it, but if you have the documentation written of what the motion was, then please feel free. I don't know why legal is answering that question.
I don't have the motion written, but I think
Then no, you may not.
I had to.
Does staff have the motion written? The amendment, I'm sorry.
Staff should have the motion written. We can read it exactly as written inside of our notes, or Ms. Boother Strother can restate what it is, but there's no need for our legal to read that.
As I understand the motion by Board Member Boozer Strother, that was seconded by Dr. J. Miller. She wants to change the wording from alternate to alternative. And she would like to change back on where it says, whereas the board believes that it is in the best interest of PGCPS to request PGC Education Collective to engage in good faith negotiations to establish a project labor agreement and.
Yes, point of clarification.
My amendment is the actual change. Do you have that, Ms. Dent? Are you ready to say that change?
No, I didn't have that part.
That
I go back to my original request.
The amendment is the
Thank you.
language that is currently on board docs, and what we're discussing is that that document wasn't officially amended. So the original document said what Ms. Dent said. So Ms. Dent, if you want to pull up the document currently in board docs, that is the language, but we skipped a step. You know, we never amended it. So I'm suggesting we amend it, and it's exactly what's in board docs. Whereas the board requires PGC Education Collective to engage in negotiations and establish a project labor agreement and.
Thank you for the clarification. Are you clear, Ms. Dent? And
Yes.
and that should answer your question, Board Member Adam Stafford, correct?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Let's move forward with the vote.
Madam Vice Chair Walker, my hand was raised.
Did you have a point of clarification or point of order?
No, it was before you called for the question. My hand was raised.
Yes, and you asked for point of order, a point of clarification.
That
What
was
is it?
before. That was before. I wanted
Thank
to
you for
speak.
asking your question, Board Member Rout. What is it?
Yes, thank you so much. This is not a question. Okay, my time has started. Colleagues, this is getting a little bit ridiculous. So it sounds like everyone wants to point the blame and point the finger about people playing politics. This is the politics. We've heard from more than 50 parents and community members about action, and Board Member Boozer Strother put forth the action with 2 amendments to reflect what is presently on board docs right now, today, this second. I'm speaking in favor of the amendment so that we don't have any OMA violations and we can move forward. I'm sure we all have families that we need to get to instead of sitting here arguing like elementary age students. I am disappointed that we are still here 2 hours later going back and forth. Please vote this in favor so we can make sure that these schools are available for our students. This is not about who can have the biggest pile of urine on the floor. Now I'm tired of it. Let's vote it up so we can move on with the business of this board. I yield.
Thank you. The motion has been said and the motion has been seconded. And so I'm calling for the question. Are there any more discussions that need to happen? Anyone? I don't see hands. And so Ms. Dent, if you can call the roll call. Thank you.
Mrs. Adam Stafford,
Aye.
Ms. Boozer Strother,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mr. Fields, Dr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Ms. LaSalle Frazier,
Aye.
Dr. J. Miller, Dr. Z. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Aye.
Mrs. Ralph,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera Forbes,
Aye.
Ms. Mickens Murray,
Aye.
11, motion carries.
Thank you.
There were 3 that didn't come across, at least in mine. I didn't hear Mr. Fields' vote. I know he said it, but I
I
didn't
didn't
hear.
hear.
I
No.
also didn't hear. You said you didn't hear it. I also didn't hear Dr. Miller, one of the Dr. Millers, and I also didn't hear Jonathan Briggs, just as a
Correct.
heads up.
Correct.
Thank you. If you can just recall those because they're physically present. We just did not hear them. Thank you.
My
I
apologies.
voted no.
Mr. Fields, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Dr. J. Miller,
Yes.
Mr.
And
Briggs,
thank you.
Mr. Briggs,
No answer.
that's 12. Motion carries.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to take it, give it back to Chair Mickens Murray so that we can continue. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Walker. Now we're back to the original motion to approve the Blueprint Schools Phase 2 preferred developer and approval to proceed to commercial and financial closing. And it has already been approved and seconded. Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, we go to the vote. Ms. Dent?
My hand was up, Madam Chair. I want to be
Oh,
clear.
I'm sorry.
It's
I didn't
okay.
see it up on the
No
graph.
worries. I just want to be clear. We voted on an amendment. So what does that do to this?
Okay, my understanding is that the amendment accepted all the language that's in the board action summary tonight. So that is what we're voting on tonight. I mean, now.
Okay, and so this has put us in a place where we'll not be an OMA violation.
Exactly as I understand it, but we'll let the lawyer answer. Mr. Woodley, would you please?
Again, it lessens any exposure for an OMA violation.
Any other, were you done, Dr. Miller?
I was, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? I see no hands. Ms. Dent, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams Stafford,
Aye.
Ms. Boozer Strother,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mr. Fields,
No.
Dr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Ms. LaSalle Frazier,
Aye.
Dr. J. Miller,
Aye.
Dr. Z. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Murray,
Yes.
Ms. Ralph,
Aye.
Ms. Walker,
Aye.
Ms. Rivera Forbes,
Aye.
Ms. Mickens Murray.
Aye. The motion carried.
Motion carries.
1, 2.
I didn't hear Mr. Board Member Briggs. Did he vote?
Mr. Briggs didn't vote the last time. He hasn't voted this time, but the motion carries.
Okay.
Colleagues, thank you so much. To the public, I apologize for all of the discourse, but now we will move to our second item, 5.1, Capital Improvement Program for fiscal years 2025 through 2030. I will yield the floor to Superintendent House and his staff to give the board additional information about the Capital Improvement Program for fiscal years 2025 and 2030.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd like to, of course, provide the board with some oversight here and information. I'll pass it over to my capital improvement team to present any additional information.
Thank you so much, Superintendent House, Board Chair Mickens-Murray, and Vice Chair Walker. Again, the item before us is focused on the approval of the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2025 to 2030. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Capital Programs, Mr. Matlock. As we understand, there were questions about the additional $10 million requested as support of the overall CIP request.
Good evening, Board Chair Mickens-Murray and Vice Chair Walker and the rest of the board. I thank you for this time. We have a presentation. I know that the board meeting is run quite late. I don't know if some of you seen the presentation in OBAFA, and some of you have seen them at our public hearing, but I'm prepared to go forward with the presentation if you would like to move forward with that at this time. I believe the board staff has the presentation.
No, I don't.
It was posted on Board Docs?
Yes. Well, if I can ask a question, I think, Mr. Matlock, the board was interested in the difference between I think it was 10 million last week.
Yes.
I think it's 13 million this week.
Yes.
And I think that's the focus. And if I'm speaking out of turn, board members, let me know. But I think that is the focus for tonight.
Fair enough. So I have brought with me Will Smith, who is our supervisor of project management, and he can speak to some of the questions that were raised. Will?
Thank you, Sean. Good evening, team. Board Chair Mickens-Murray, Vice Chair Walker, board member, Superintendent House, etc. And so today, I'm sure if you already have the presentation that was provided for the additional information as it relates to the breakout of the additional request. Last week, we talked about the change from the initial shortfall request of roughly $3 million to increasing that to $13 million for an additional $10 million to support some of our systemic projects and some budget concerns that we had, or budget constraints that we had as it relates to those. Two of those projects are projects that are actively in construction. One of which is James Madison, which is a HVAC modernization project in which the bulk of the money is really being aligned for that project. They are currently swung over at Forestville High School. And part of that scope is really, it started off as a HVAC upgrade where we're going in and really just doing a major HVAC upgrade there, lighting upgrade, ceiling tile, ceiling grid, etc. Also part of it was a fire protection system that was being installed. Throughout the design process and coordinating with our local permitting agencies, there was additional requirements that were brought about that then triggered some additional work to be required in order for us to be able to proceed with construction. Some of that work, a lot of that work was outside of the contractor's base scope and base contract, thus the reason why we're coming for and requesting the additional budget to support that. Also, part of the idea is, when we're in a lot of these renovation projects, there is always a ton of unforeseens because of the age and deterioration within our facilities. And at the point that we actually get into and are able to proceed with investive demolition, a lot of unforeseen items are highlighted, some of which are structural issues, some of which are some code compliance issues as it relates to like fire caulking, fire stopping, etc. For fire rated walls and things of that nature. And so the funds are really to support a host of different things. A portion of it is for some asbestos abatement. And so when we talk about asbestos abatement, we originally had we coordinated with our environmental division to understand what the magnitude of the asbestos containing material located within that facility. Every project or every facility contains a red book, which identifies all the hazardous materials for each site. And that red book is used in order to coordinate with our contractors in order to make sure that they are including the appropriate amount of pricing in order to perform those services. Unfortunately, the quantities that were identified within the Red Book were misrepresented, and unfortunately, the contractor was not given the accurate information to support all of the work that was needed. And so that is a part of what this additional funding is for, is really, for that in itself is about a $1.5 million deficit. Some of the other items associated with the abatement was pipe and mastic, duct insulation. There was also caulking that was hot around all of the windows and doors, which are also replaced as well, which has been completed. And so that is kind of talking to the unforeseen asbestos abatement items. In terms of the code compliance items, there was some ductwork reconfiguration that was required. That was brought about during the permitting review with our third-party reviewer. That was part of the DPI process. And so there were some changes as a result of that. And then there was also the main one, because we are adding a sprinkler system to that facility, we're increasing the amount of water flow that is required to provide adequate water for just general requirements, but then also for fire suppression system. The existing facility contained a 4-inch water main, and at the point that we added the sprinkler system to sprinkle the entire facility, but then provide additional capacity for additional modulars that were put out there as well, we needed to upsize that to an 8-inch main. And so that was not also included in the contractor scope of work, and which is going to support, the funds are going to support the costs incurred as it relates to that. Some of some of the other items as well is, in terms of, structural supports, the original intent for that project was to include all of the equipment within the penthouse section of the school. It was determined once we went through a structural assessment that the soil capacity or soil bearing capacity was not sufficient in order to support that load. And then at that point, we needed to kind of reshift our focus and relocate some of that equipment to another wing of the facility, but then some of that actually went down to the ground as well. In the other wing which we needed to relocate it, there was some structural improvements that were required to be performed there in order to get that approved by permitting to be able to start for construction. And so that is a portion of there. Another section of it, and which is probably one of some of the largest as well, is, while we're, we are swinging the school to another site, we feel as though that this is an opportune time in order to be able to make some additional improvements while they are swung. This also, kind of limits the amount of disruption in the future if we were to come back, but then also allows us, listen, we already have contractors on the ground, we already have a team established, and it makes the most sense in order to just do some additional architectural improvements. That way, when the student body and administration comes back, a lot of the improvements that we're doing outside of here are not really architectural related, so they're not as visual. It definitely will provide better comfort, thermal comfort, et cetera, and lighting. But in terms of just an architectural improvement, the base contract did not include that. So that's why some of that is also going towards, the funding request is going towards some of those additional architectural improvements that we would like to make. And so that is, kind of the update for James Madison. I know that was one of the major concerns or questions that came about. And I think the other question was about just whether or not that contractor, I think grossly misunderrepresented their proposal, and is that common? And they did not. Unfortunately, it was a design build project in which we identified the scope of work that we would like them to actually provide a proposal on. And then our scope of work, unfortunately, was not as detailed as needed, or did not anticipate the additional compliance regulation that was prompted to us. And then also the unforeseen asbestos as well. So it wasn't an act of on their end of just being negligible. It was more so that, just trying to align with, the new requirements with the DPI and us. This is really just a limited renovation now that has expanded from a HVAC upgrade project. And so with that, I guess if there's any other questions, feel free to shoot on. I'm here to answer anything as needed, or if that's sufficient.
Will, would you just explain the Phil C. Williams, bid
Okay,
issue?
yeah, I can absolutely go through that as well. So Phyllis E. Williams is another HVAC modernization project. They are also currently swung, I believe, at Robert Goddard as well. The funding that is being requested for that project, I believe, is roughly
300,000.
No, the funding that's being requested, I believe, is roughly 1.2 or $1.5 million for that. And so the total project budget for Phyllis Williams was $9 million. We put that out on the market to bid, and the prices came in at 9.3, so $300,000 over our total budget. And so that is the justification for the request of the additional funds. It's to make sure, one, that we can provide the additional $318,000 to make that contract whole, but then also to make sure that we have enough contingency in case once they get into demolition, then and there's some unforeseens that potentially could be exposed, that there is some funding in place in order to be able to address some of those concerns.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'd be glad to entertain any additional questions. Chair Murray, if there are any.
Board member, I see Adams, Shayla Adams Stafford's hand. Board member.
Thank you so much, and I do appreciate that explanation. I think really I wanted to ask if you could just elaborate a bit more on the code challenges that prompted us to ask for this amended amount. You know, I'm very concerned about the fact that, you know, this increase is really going, $7 million is really going to one company, one contractor. And I want to know more about the process for defining a scope of work. You know, basically, the total cost of the project was $15 million. And this amendment would provide $7 million to this one contractor. And so that's half of the budget for the entire project. And so, you know, it seems to me like there needs to be some type of protocol in place, especially when we're working with buildings, let's say over a certain age, where asbestos and caulking and all of those sort of very specific problems that we see with older schools are folded into the RFP, because basically we're underestimating the amount of work that someone has to do, and then we don't know whether they're padding the cost. I personally would like to see an actual spreadsheet with all that you stated broken down. I mean, we've just received kind of like a paragraph that explains, and I do appreciate you providing us with a budget justification this time, but typically I would like to see some type of spreadsheet that breaks down the actual cost, you know, because this is a very large amount of money for basically one contractor. So if you could speak to those topics, that would be helpful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your question, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Madlock, go ahead.
Yeah. So first off, as Will explained, the information that we had provided to the contractor in the Red Book was inaccurate. It underestimated the amount of asbestos in the building. The only thing that my department has to go on is the Red Book that's reported. That's all that the contractor had to go on. And so they made a bid based on that Red Book information. And once they got in there, they discovered that the Red Book was wrong. And you have to address the asbestos. It has to be abated in order for the project to move forward. So it wasn't really like an optional thing. And I believe that they gave us the rate at the same rate that those services were being provided for the other work that they had already bid out. There's a cap on change orders. I believe it's 10% is the cap on change orders. And so there's only so much profit that can be made on a change order. Plus all the additional scopes for changes that were made on this project were owner requested changes. They were not developer directed changes. So we requested, because we had to comply with the law in order to provide the appropriate amount of water for the water main, and because we discovered that there was a structural problem, which you may realize we didn't finish our structural study until like the end of last year. And so when we discover a structural problem, which we discovered here, we couldn't put the system where it originally was supposed to go. So that's moving and redesigning the HVAC system and moving it to another location is a very expensive proposition, and and it's reflected in the price that we're dealing with. In toto, this is not unusual. In some cases, we have done this before. When we did Central High School, there were some requests from the board that they wanted to see changes to the scope of the project, and we added some $20 million to the Central High School budget based on those requests in order to make the public feel like we were doing more in the building than we had originally planned to do. In this case, again, I know it seems like a lot of money, but the $10 million, if you think about the whole scope of our budget over the next 5 years, is around almost $1.2 billion. So it's not, I'm not saying it's a drop in the bucket, but we spend more at other schools. We're going to spend more at other schools where we merged certain contracts, where we put HVAC and new roofing projects, depending on the size of the school. So to spend $22 million at a school is not a dramatic expenditure for a renovation of this type.
I appreciate that. And my only request here is, and I know that we need to ensure that this school is up and ready and the HVAC is working for our students. So I, urge my colleagues for us to move forward with this. My request is that at our next OBAFA meeting, that you bring the Red Book to the OBAFA meeting, and that we do an in-depth discussion about how to update that so we don't have a miscalculation in the future. And then also, I would ask my colleague, Mr. Fields, to work with me and our CIP team to develop some type of procedure for understanding budget justifications so that they're more detailed, so that board members can have more information when a change order of this type comes about, so that we can make better decisions.
Thank you.
Glad to.
I'm sorry.
We'd be glad to do so.
Okay, Board Member Adam Stafford, your time has expired, but I realized that the answer took some of your time. So that is the reason I allowed it to continue. I see a Board Member Harris and then Board Member Rout.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for acknowledging me. And thank you, Mr. Matlock and Mr. Smith. So this question is for either of you. From a I guess a PM lens, dealing with what I would call an aggressively schedule-driven project, what are your margins for project overage? And a percentage is fine if you don't have the exact figure. And then also, what are some of the, I guess, buckets of money that overage typically apply for or apply to?
As far as percentages are concerned, it's project driven. So depending on the size and the nature of the project will determine the type of contingency that we make available for these types of projects. It can be as much as 2 to 5% based depending on what we have. We usually don't try to go more than that because it gets to a point where we don't have a lot of budget. So we try to limit it to that. But in cases right now, what we saw, just to give you some history, the last 2 years have been a challenge because a lot of our projects were designed under one building code. And while they were being completed, another building code came into fruition. And when the inspectors went to inspect or determine the scopes, value the scopes of what we were doing, they applied the new building code. And that required us to make significant changes to the scopes of multiple projects. And it did cause us to have some cost overruns. Now, these projects, the new projects going forward, should be designed to the new code, and we shouldn't have that problem.
I follow. I asked the question because it is a changing landscape, right? And so my understanding is that some of it, not all of these changes, are a function of health and safety within the school, changes in or expansions of our SOP or our SOW, our SOW, our statement of work with our contractors. And then finally, code compliance, which is necessary to open the buildings, right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
I asked the question around contingencies and overage because in the thought of mitigating the situation, if we're talking 2 to 5%, obviously I would be suggesting on the far end of 5% because our schools are older and more dilapidated. So you need to expect the unexpected. You open a wall. Now you have to deal with the specials. You open a wall. Let's just say there's a colony of mice, for example. Like, how do you deal with that? So in terms of accounting for additional margin in the future, do you see any space for allowing us to try to prepare better for that? Because I understand I understand the thought of coming back and asking for more money, but dealing with the unknowns of what's happening at the school and then the red book and yada yada. But yeah,
we try not to. So we are dealing with a very stressed budget overall. Okay. So as you heard at the hearing, there are lots of schools that are nowhere on the CIP that have dramatic needs. And as stated earlier many times, we know that our need was reflected in roughly an expense of $425 million annually. And and at that time when that was put forward, our budgets were around $130 million. They have grown to about $175 million. But as you can tell, that's still 200 and some million dollars short of what we actually need to do everything that we need to do. So our budgets are tight. They're really tight. I mean, it may not seem like it because they're such large numbers. And so when we run into something where we have major we have a major change to a project because of a code compliance, there isn't enough money usually in the contingency to cover it all. And so we do every year, as you may note, in our CIP, we have a category called shortfall. And that shortfall is to address those types of issues. And to be honest with you, one of the things that I proposed in my recent goals for my department is to put together a more robust shortfall policy to deal with these issues, and also to maybe write a fund balance policy that allows for a fund to be developed that could be utilized for shortfall in the future when we have these issues. But that's something for the future. We're going to have to develop that, but that's where we are right now.
And it seems like you're making progressive strides to try to make sure you're looking into the future with it. So colleagues, when we boil this down to it, projects, schools, things like that, we're thinking 3 things: triple constraints, budget, schedule, quality. We know that our schools are quality. We know our schools are done on time. So we're going to continue to have these conversations around budget. Now we can sacrifice quality for budget, or we can sacrifice one or the other, but you typically can't have all 3 in these structures. Well, in the perfect world, you could, but there's going to be constant conversations around these budgets. So I encourage our colleagues to support this moving forward. And I do agree that we can take more in-depth looks at the Red Book to make more informed decisions in the future. But this is going to be a constant collaborative effort across the board. But keep doing what you're doing, team. Great work thus far. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Board Member Rout.
Thank you so much, Chair Mickens-Murray. I just want to thank Superintendent House and his staff for responding to the board and giving us the necessary information that we needed to really make an informed decision about the shortfalls. And I also want to thank my colleagues for bringing it to our attention because, in the spirit of transparency and making sure we are fiscally responsive to the needs of our school system, we want to make sure that we're catching things like this. And so $10 million then grew to $12 million, then grew to an admin fee on top to me $13 million. So this is why we did this. And so I just want to applaud everyone for coming together once again. And so I really would like to request that our board members support this. And we just move forward with an understanding that there will be changes that will be made by the administration, and then we will firm it up in a policy. So I think this is an excellent example of how we can continue to move forward for the purposes of the needs of our children, their families, our teachers, and making sure that we are fiscally responsible. I yield.
Thank you. Board Member Pamela Boozer-Strother.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just wanted to express thanks to administration and to Mr. Matlock and your entire team for your hard work on this entire CIP plan and for all the excellent presentations and documentation that can be viewed by the public to really understand and be as educated as the board as we work through this very difficult situation that has become more difficult in the last 10 years since the educational facilities master plan was developed, and the dilapidation that now is at a 10-year mark that puts us in these situations of these budget needs. The decision to make some additional improvements while students are out of a building for HVAC. I just want to continue to support where that can happen because it might be able to extend, if there isn't, the instructional integrity can extend the use and life as we get to buildings that surprise us with structural integrity, which we heard at the end of this year with Templeton and Woodmore. We need that flexibility, and we did that for Central High, and I thought that was a really good decision, and I see it again, and I would like to encourage that they aren't the high dollars, but they can make a difference of educational use while we get to more urgent building issues. And again, as we wrap this up, I just want to congratulate your team, Associate Superintendent Jason Washington, on the phase 1 success. You're absolutely a national model. The accolades and the awards are rolling in. The press on this has been phenomenal, and just really proud to be a board member serving at this time as we have become a national model. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Board members, are there any additional questions of the team for CIP? Seeing no other hands, colleagues, may I have a motion to approve agenda item 5.1, capital improvement program for fiscal years 2025 through 2030.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none.
Chair, can we call for a unanimous vote? That might be the easiest thing to do.
I know, but at the last meeting, they said I needed to take the roll call so that we could have validation for audits. So I'm asking Ms. Dent, do the roll call, please.
Ms. Adam Stafford,
Aye.
Ms. Boozer Strother,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs, Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Dr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Jackson, Ms. LaSalle Frazier.
Aye.
I'm gonna go back to Mr. Jackson because I saw his mic turn off and on. Mr. Jackson, I can't hear you.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. LaSalle Frazier, did I call you?
You did, and I said
Okay.
aye.
Okay, thank you. Dr. J. Miller.
Aye.
Dr.
Aye.
Dr. Z. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Murray.
Aye.
Mrs. Rout.
Aye.
Ms. Walker.
Aye.
Ms. Rivera Forbes.
Aye.
Ms. Mickens Mary.
Aye. Motion carries. Colleagues, thank you. I know it's been a long night, but appreciate you to the administration, Superintendent House, and your administration. Thank you for all of your patience with us tonight. Our follow-up items will be posted on board docs upon receipt. And may I have, before we adjourn, I would like to thank board member Boozer Struthers. Thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom tonight. And with that said, colleagues may have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're
Aye.
adjourning at 7:46. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Good
you.
Thank you.